I'm Rose Cushing, host of Carolina Hoofbeats TV, and we are at Tempest Renata's farm today talking with Emily Wright. And Emily is the owner of the farm, and she has the most amazing job. She raises Lipizzan horses and Lusitano, and they are magnificent horses. So tell me a little bit about you and your background.
So I've been riding since before I could walk. My sister and mother were both into horses when I was born, and so it kind of just happened. Might as well drag the little sister along. And I was kind of the nerd. I liked to do classics. I took Latin in high school and loved it. Thought it was amazing. Took Greek. And so I was always kind of obsessed with classics, history. Mm-hmm. And we bred Hanoverians for a long time. And then we decided, well, you know, we didn't really like exactly where we saw the breed going. So we said, well, let's look at maybe some of these rare breeds that really need to be preserved and some breeds that are good for amateurs, good for doing kind of everything and are very hardy. And so we looked at the Baroque breeds. Mm-hmm. And we looked around, and at the time the market was kind of starting to crash a little bit. And so we were debating what we were going to do. And we ended up going with a Lipizzan. And part of it was when Mom was a little girl, the movie Miracle of the White Stallions came out. And so ever since then, she wanted a Lipizzan. So we said, well, now's the time.
Yes.
Now's the time. So our first Lipizzan was a bay mare from California, and she was such a sweetheart. We loved her so much, and unfortunately she has passed away. But our second one, because Lipizzans are like potato chips. You can't just have one.
Right.
Our second one was our stallion. And then they just sort of started coming in droves after that.
Sure. I can see how they would.
Yep, they did. So, so I decided, after debating what I was going to do with my career, I decided, well, there's not that many young people coming up in classical dressage. So I said, well, I guess I'll be the young person.
Right.
So I did an internship with someone who had worked at Temple Farms and whose trainer had been at the Spanish riding school. And then I got to clinic with her trainer. And I've clinicked with other riders from the school. And the rest is history.
Very nice. So tell me about the Lipizzan breed. You know, you do a lot more than just dressage.
Yes. So the Lipizzan breed is a little over 500 years old. It was originated in the town of Lipica, which back then was Lipizzan. Mm-hmm. And so, hence the Lipizzan, or horse. It was basically made to be like the Cadillac of the nobility.
Right.
The nobles all like to have these Spanish horses as status symbols. And conversely, the horses are also great in battle. Mm-hmm. They're very hardy, they're very quick, light on their feet, good minds, because you don't really want the king to fall off and break his neck.
Sure. And brave.
And brave, so that you can go jousting, basically. Or at that point, it was light, more lighter cavalry. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the light cavalry of the 19th century, but you had more fencing on horseback, fighting with lances. So it wasn't the heavy armored medieval cavalry. It was lighter armored. You had firearms starting to come into play. Mm-hmm. So as warfare changed, the horses changed, and then the nobility said, well, these horses are absolutely gorgeous with their arching necks. Yes. And, you know, the beautiful high steps. So the Lipizzan was a local Spanish horse. All the stock was brought over from Spain, some through Italy. Mm-hmm. Those were the founding stallions of certain bloodlines. And so that became sort of the Austrian collection of Spanish horses.
Right.
After a couple hundred years, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, Napoleon came through. Mm-hmm. It also had warfare changing, so the horses were used more as status symbols. All these nobles and royals had riding schools. And so whenever a visiting dignitary would come by, it would be, we'd go to the music hall, we'd go see the horses perform.
Right.
It was part of their entertainment. So around the time of Napoleon, a lot of the other schools kind of vanished. Spanish riding school still held strong, but the horses had to flee Napoleon. So the stud book was lost.
Oh, wow.
So now our stud book dates back to late 1700s. I can't name the year off the top of my head, but that's when we started documenting the founding stallions, the founding mares. And so we have the 6 founding stallions: Neapolitano, Maestoso, Conversano, Favori, Siglavi, and Pluto. Are the 6 founding stallions. Each came from different places. Neapolitano and Conversano came from Italy. Maestoso came from Spain, I believe. Favori, I can't remember off the top of my head. Siglavi was an Arabian, actually. And Pluto came from Denmark.
Okay.
So there's actually thought that Pluto was a few-spot Knobstrupper. Another very rare breed.
For sure.
So, and the mares came from various areas, including local, like karst areas, all still Spanish stock, but bred for a while in different areas. Many were Arabians as well. And so nowadays, the definition of a purebred Lipizzan is the horse has to trace completely back to founding members or founding horses. It cannot be, well, this one was not an official founding ancestor. No, all the ancestors have to be original founding ancestors.
Believe it or not, I knew most of those stallions' names. I've heard them in the past, and except Pluto, I didn't know him, but the other names are all familiar to me.
Part of that might be because the names of the stallions, what they do in the naming convention is they use the stallion bloodline with the dam's name.
Okay.
So if you have a stallion of the Pluto bloodline, and his mother was Favoressa, so to say, then you have Pluto Favoressa.
Okay.
If he has other brothers, Pluto Favoressa 2, 3, 4.
Okay. So you don't just add like Jack or something on the end of it. It just
you add
does
numbers.
a number. Okay, very interesting.
So that's generally the convention. Different stud farms do it a little differently. The Hungarians tend to just use the stallion line. So it'll be Maestoso 40, Maestoso 52. At Piber, at the breeding farm for the Spanish riding school, they use the traditional, for example, Pluto Favoressa. The Americans kind of follow Piber's tradition. They stray a little bit in the naming of the mares. Piber goes back to the 4th to 8th generations and pick a name.
Right.
So they pick one of those names, and so the names often repeat. In America, they want unique names for the mares. So that's where the only real difference is. Kind of drives the Austrians crazy.
I'm sure.
Especially the guys at the school. They get a little bit, well, you pick a name, and the rest of us go,
Yeah, she has to be Trixie, not number 47.
Exactly. She can't be, she can't be Kitty number 5.
Right.
We have to have a unique name. And if the name is not unique, say a horse is imported, then they add a numeral to the end of that name, whether or not they're related to the first one of the name or not.
Okay.
So
very interesting.
It's very interesting.
Very
you can
interesting.
go down all kinds of rabbit holes
For sure.
with the history.
The rural American lifestyle. It's how we work, and it's how we play. It's how we learn and how we enjoy the finer things in life. How we take care of our animals and tend to the land. It's a way of life. Has been for hundreds of years. Now there's a whole new way for rural America to watch TV.
So Austria is the primary place for all of the stud book and that kind of stuff. I would have thought Spain.
Yeah, because the horses were moved to Lipica for the Habsburg Empire. That's where it became its own breed.
Okay.
So when the idea of all these individual breeds started, that's actually a fairly recent idea. It was more type and where the horse is from. So 300, 400 years ago, it was a Spanish horse. It wasn't an Andalusian, it wasn't a Lusitano, it wasn't anything like that. It was Spanish.
Okay.
Just generic Spanish. Now we have all these divisions between the different breeds. So that's where the Lipizzan came from, the Spanish horses in Austria, and from that breeding program. And it is the oldest, the Spanish riding school is the oldest surviving riding school from the original period. A lot of the others died out.
Right.
The one at Versailles was very famous, very popular. French Revolution came through and they destroyed the riding school. So that's where Vienna was the only city left with this wonderful riding school. And so it's another reason the history is so well documented, because you had the Habsburg breeding program for this school, and then everything just stayed very well documented.
That's really interesting, because when you think about destroying the riding school, you think, well, that's horrible, but really, and it is horrible, but really in battle, that was like a fort or an army base. I mean, because that's where they trained.
Not as much.
No?
You had your military training outside.
So it
and
was a
more of
different,
the-
okay.
Yeah, you had these riding schools are more for the nobility.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
they were, for example, the Spanish riding school is connected to the Hofburg Palace.
Okay.
In the middle of the city of Vienna.
Okay.
It's literally you walk under an arch, and one way takes you to one part of the school, another way takes you to the stables. Go a little further, there's the palace.
Okay. All right. I was thinking that that's where they would train their military to use them in battle, but that was further
They
back.
would send high-ranking officers to the school. So, for example, we have the memorable Podolsky. Colonel Podolsky was the director of the Spanish riding school. In his days training in the cavalry, many officers were sent to the school for training, and then they'd go back to the basic training
Okay.
for the cavalry.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. So you do other stuff too, though. You do martial arts and you do all kinds of archery.
So-
and tell me all about that.
Traditionally, dressage was an art form of war.
Absolutely.
Just like actually gymnastics was. It was an art form of war. So there's growing interest in reviving some of the really old aspects. Nowadays we think, oh, well, being able to move sideways is great for battle, being able to, go from stop to start to stop, being able to do all these things is great for battle. Okay, cool. Now we focus on competition and showing off these moves. There's a collective term called HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts, and that focuses on bringing back things like longsword, lance, the messer, all kinds of other different forms of working with the blades, armored combat versus unarmored. Now there's also mounted. So people are relearning how to work with mounted combat. Rossfechten is the most popular, which is mounted fencing. Even then, not much Rossfechten in the U.S. at this point.
Right.
People, there's jousting, people practice jousting, but there's also experts who are bringing back jousting more for battle, less for sport, because there was a very big divide. Jousting for sport, you had very heavy armor, you shattered your lance on the other
Right.
guy, you definitely had to protect the people because it was only the wealthy who really did much jousting.
Sure.
So they were, very much protected. In battle, little different. You had to be able to move and you had to be able to keep your weapon. And if you lost it, you had another weapon.
Right.
So we're starting to work with some of the local HEMA groups, and we're hoping to bring Rossfechten. Right now, we sort of dabble with it. And so we're at least training the horses to be used to a blade, being near them and doing things around them. That's one of the bigger portions. We train the horses so that they're responsive, so they're ready whenever we get Rossfechten really going. Then we also have fun with mounted archery, very old art form or martial art.
Right.
That's just a lot of fun. It is competitive nowadays. There is the Mounted Archery Association of the Americas. and there are international competitions as well. They're still coming about in the East Coast. They're very popular out west, but we're getting there. We're getting it happening.
Hey, let's host one. I think that would be so fun.
Yeah, so we're by no means are we the center yet
Right.
for all this stuff, but we're hoping to become a center for education for these different art forms, as well as the basic, which is dressage.
Right.
Dressage is the foundation for all of it.
Hi, my name is Charles Ramsey from Lost Creek Cattle Company. This is one of our stallions we use. His name's Hairpin Blue Checks. We heel on him. We rope calves on him. We do mounted shooting on him. We raise about 35 colts off of him a year. He's a great individual, good-minded. He can go any direction. Whatever you're looking for, we probably have him. If you buy anything off this course right here, he's going to be good-minded and sure enough have the ability to do what anybody wants to do.
Dressage is such an art form in itself, and it has so many facets and depth.
Oh,
but
yeah.
to have all of this on top of that, that's just a crazy cool.
It gives you a new appreciation for the movements.
Absolutely.
When you just work on the movements themselves, they're fantastic for the horse, they're beautiful to see, but then putting them into practice with a weapon gives you a different appreciation of
Absolutely.
how light the horse needs to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't wait to see that. It's going to be so fascinating.
So it's
All right.
fun stuff to do.
Now, a little about your farm. Tell me what you offer here as far as breeding and sales.
Yep. So we offer classical dressage instruction. We also offer some working equitation instruction, which is that is its own art form in a way, but it's based with dressage. I teach lessons to people of basically all levels. We have lesson horses that we can teach on for people who either would like to learn on a horse that's more trained or don't have their own horse anymore. We have schoolmasters, we have lower level horses, we have all kinds of things
Right.
that we can offer. And so we also breed the Lipizzans and we breed Lusitanos some. So we offer young stock for sale. Occasionally we'll have some other breeds involved. We'll somehow another horse will end up in our laps and we say, well, okay, do we keep this? Do we move on? How do we do? And so we train it so that it's ready for someone else.
Right.
If they want a different horse to take on and move up the levels. We do some commissions for sales. Not as many of those at this point, but that's
Right.
just at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went to Las Vegas and saw the Royal Lipizzan stallions, and I saw them in PNC, but that was a nosebleed seat, so you couldn't really see them. But in Las Vegas, I could really see them. And it seems like that they said that they turn white as they get older and they're born black. Tell me about that.
So with the gray gene with horses, the horses start off dark, whatever their foundation color is, and then the gene acts to whiten their hairs with time.
Okay. Just like a gray horse.
Just
okay.
like a gray horse. So
Right.
it's become part of the mystique
I
of the
know.
Lipizzan that they're born black and turn white. It's the gray gene. The
Right.
same as it works in any other breed. Some of them don't turn all the way white. Some of them will keep a dark mane. Some will keep flea bitten spots. Some will keep even a dark patch somewhere. There was a stallion at the school that had a dark leg. Go figure.
Right.
But they all basically turn white.
Even the bays?
So there are some rare ones that will stay a true solid color. So we actually have a bay mare. on
Yeah.
our site.
I wondered if she was just really young or...
No, she is in her teens. She is in foal.
Nice.
So we're very excited. Her sire came from the Spanish riding school and her dam came from Peeber. So there's performance records of both sides performing at the Spanish riding school.
Very nice.
And there are the occasional chestnuts, the occasional blacks. Those are more in the Romanian bloodlines, not as much the Austrian. There is one that I know of and that I think anybody knows of that is a buckskin.
Wow.
Back in the 1850s or 60s, a third of the horses at the Spanish riding school were buckskin.
Well, black gene. I mean, it makes sense.
Yep. But the emperor decided he wanted them all white. And so you do what the emperor tells you. He is the patron.
Right.
So they bred them all white. Now there's only one buckskin in the world that we know of,
Right.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But we're hoping, I think her owner is hoping to get more buckskins on the ground.
That'll be cool.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Lusitano breed. Tell me a little about that.
So the Lusitano is a very old breed that originated on the Iberian Peninsula. It is considered the Portuguese branch of the original Spanish horse. So originally it was just the kind of Iberian horse, and they were basically, the Andalusian and Lusitano were the same thing for a long time. Then when there were more strong divides between the two countries, then the Lusitano became more specifically bred by the Portuguese and Andalusian by the Spanish. The Lusitano has been bred for hundreds of years. There is no set date as far as when the breed originated. It has been bred for hundreds of years for bullfighting and warfare. So they were bred to be the status symbol of the nobility, but also part of the entertainment that they provided for the nobility was bullfighting. And so that has been the major focus historically of the Lusitano breeding. Was a horse that was courageous and athletic enough to save his rider in the bull ring, and therefore it was a good test of the same qualities for battle.
Right.
Because if you can survive a charging bull, hopefully you could survive someone coming at you with a lance in battle.
Very good. So what are the characteristics of a Lusitano that make it appealing to you?
The bravery, the trainability is the big one, because they have been bred to have very tractable temperaments. So they're pretty easy to train. They're very intelligent. They can be very sensitive, but where some breeds are more sensitive in a panicky way, Lusitanos are more just sensitive to the rider's aids. They are workhorses. They will. I laugh that it's both a great quality and a big negative is that a Lusitano will let you work them to death.
Right.
Which makes it especially difficult with a senior horse, because he will let you go, and then the next day he's very sore.
Yeah.
So I take very cautious care of my old man who's 25 and still working very hard, because if he's not working, he's not happy.
Right.
He's trying to tear the barn down or run ruts in the pasture. So I am his servant. I do what he bids.
There you go. Well, that's probably a good plan, because he certainly is a magnificent horse.
He's a great guy. He was actually a bullfighter in Old Mexico.
Wow.
Lusitanos are still used to this day for bullfighting in Mexico, Spain, Portugal, and other countries. Some countries, like Portugal, are doing bullfighting where they do not kill the bull. Other countries do kill the bull. He came from that background. There is some bloodless bullfighting that they're starting, but it's pretty rare. It's hard to find.
Right. So how long have you had him?
I have had him 9 years, and I got him as a rising 16-year-old. He had been a bullfighter until he was 10, and then he was imported to the U.S., and then he ended up in my lap. I got him from a lovely lady out in western part of the state, and we've learned a lot, grown together. He's a good old man. He's a good guy.
Now, I don't see a lot of bullfighting around here, so what do you do with him now?
We do dressage mostly. We compete in dressage. We've competed 4th level together. We do demos We play around demonstrating with the garrocha, with using the sword against different things, since we're still getting into Rosfechten right now. The extent of it is being able to just wield the sword against a target.
Right.
And we do some mounted archery for fun. We trail ride. We go out on trail rides. We just have fun now. Now the goal is to have fun, and we compete every now and then. If the competitions were closer, I would compete him in working equitation. But due to his age, I'm a little worried about traveling 6 hours or even 4 hours to the closest competition.
Right. Do you breed him still?
He is still breeding. We are expecting a foal from him for 2020. He's not super advertised publicly standing because of his age. Fertility's starting to become a little bit more of an issue.
Sure.
But we still got a baby.
Awesome.
And we will continue having babies as long as he is around, because he's so amazing.
He is amazing. So what other Lusitano horses do you have on your farm?
I have 2 mares. One is a buckskin mare that I purchased for breeding to my stallion.
Right.
One is their foal. Their first foal is a 3-year-old filly. And then I have 2 half Lusitanos out of my Dutch warm blood cross mare. She was one of my first to train up to 2nd level. So I said, well, why not have 2 of my heart horses make amazing performance babies?
Absolutely.
So we have, I guess that makes 3 and 2 halves for
Right.
Lusitanos.
And how common are Lusitanos in the U.S.?
They're not common by any means. You see them more than you see Lipizzans. You see Lusitanos in the competition ring fairly regularly. You see half Lusitanos. The registry for Lusitanos is combined in this country with the registry for Andalusians.
Okay.
And so they do shows, they do competitions for Spanish horses, and so Andalusian Lusitanos often compete together. Lusitanos are much more rare than Andalusians as a rule. They're still not uncommon to see, but you're more likely, if you see a Spanish horse at a competition, it's probably an Andalusian and not a Lusitano.
Right. All right. Well, hang on just a minute. What else should I ask you? Because my brain
I
did.
think what else do Lusitanos do?
Okay. So what other things do the Lusitanos do?
They're very competitive in dressage. There are Lusitanos that represent different countries in the Olympics pretty regularly.
Right.
They are good in eventing, which surprises a lot of people because they are Baroque breed, basically.
Right. They're kind of a heavy.
Lusitanos are pretty light on their feet and pretty agile. So they compete in eventing. Some, you don't see very much, but some do compete in driving. Some do hunter classes, mostly with the Andalusian show circuit. Where they completely rule is working equitation. Almost all the top riders have a Lusitano that they compete with. You don't see as many of the warm bloods competing at the international levels. You see mostly Lusitanos.
So they really, their personalities and their makeup kind of really aligns with that high technical caliber riding.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're very fast, but they're very fast on the aids. Because they were bred traditionally for bullfighting, what they do well in, but you don't see them in, is cutting.
Okay.
They're very good at cutting and sorting because they have the cow instinct bred into them traditionally. Some people don't focus on that, but we like to keep that cowy mentality to them because it's what they originally bred for.
Right.
And those qualities still work very well in general sport purpose. So there's a few people who do cut them every now and then, but not as much, even though they're very good. They excel quite a bit. So you mostly see them working with cutting and sorting in the working equitation arena.
Is Portugal the primary country for them?
Portugal is the primary country. Brazil is also a huge breeder of Lusitanos. The U.S. is pretty big. We breed a little bit differently in the U.S. as a rule, but most of our stock comes from Portugal or Brazil, and most Brazilian stock comes from Portugal as well.
All right.
Some other countries breed them, like Orfeo. My stallion was bred in Mexico. Go figure. There are still some breeders in Mexico, but that's not as well known. People don't think, oh, I'm going to go import a Lusitano from Mexico.
Right.
They go to Portugal or Brazil first.
Right. Right. Well, that's really interesting that they're born and bred for bullfighting, because that would really take a courageous horse.
Yes, very courageous.
I mean, that would be a lot different than just cutting them or sorting them. I mean, that's, yeah.
Very sensitive to the aids, very trusting, because you have to trust your rider to let that bull nearly scrape your hide, because some of the riders will take off their hats and set it on the bull while they're going. The bull's trying to get the horse, and the horse is trying to get away from the bull, but they're close enough that the rider can hold his hat on the bull's head.
Right.
That takes a horse.
You're right. And it takes a horse that not only can trust you, but he can think himself too.
Exactly.
And so it's
got
got
to be independent enough to move out of the way.
Yeah, right on. Right on. Well, that's really fascinating. Well, I'm excited to see him move, so we'll go out and get some film of him. Thank you.
Plan.